Hey, good morning, everybody. Ralph Gresham with Primary Residential Mortgage here in Stockton with another episode of Real Pros Talk. And this morning we have a very special guest with us, Beth Logue from Keller Williams. Now, Beth does a lot of social media, and one of the things that she does is ask questions. People, what do you want to know? And they tell Beth exactly what they want to know. So today we picked a really important topic that Beth is really concerned about and really involved in, and that's investment properties. So we have an entire list of questions that we're going to answer for you today. Now, as always, we encourage you to call us after this and ask any questions. We're here to help you. That's what this whole program is for. Help you understand real estate and the financing part of it. So, Beth, good morning. Let's ask a couple of questions.
Good. Thanks, Ralph.
Now, this is one that we get, almost everybody says, I want to buy my first investment property, but what kind of property should I look for? Beth, what's out there right now?
So what we're seeing the most of right now is we're seeing a lot of 1 to 4 unit properties. So it just depends on what your goals are. I am hearing of very many people wanting to do the duplexes, triplexes, and quads. A lot of times they want to live in one and just really start out with their investment portfolio. However, the 1 units, buying your second, third, or fourth home, that's still something that's going on. And I'm even seeing some people that are talking about converting and doing the alternative dwelling units as well. And I know that our city has made some leaps and bounds to try and help people get those kind of things out there and ease our rental crisis.
That's actually a good point. Let's talk about that for a second. The state of California actually made it a law a couple of years ago that they allow you to make an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit. We used to call them mother-in-law's quarters. And the coolest thing about those is right now you can rent those out. They have to let you rent them. So it's a great way if you've got a detached garage, you've got a 4, 5 bedroom home and it's just you, that you convert part of it. There's actually kind of a segue into it. There's a great program that's a renovation loan by FHA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that you can literally remodel your home and add an accessory dwelling unit and get rent. Now, the one thing about doing that is you can't use that rent right now to qualify. That takes us to one of our other questions. It says, can I use rental income generated as income to qualify? And the answer to that is yes, no, or maybe. Now, I love those kind of answers, but it really is because what is it? Well, first of all, if you have a rental history, which means that you've owned rental property, no matter how long you've owned it, whatever, if you've had it, you may be able to use that rental income. There's some qualifiers. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac both want you to have experience as a landlord. Mm-hmm. FHA says if you're exiting your house and you want to make that house into a rental, you can't use the rental income. But they do say that if you're buying a home, such as a duplex, and you want to live in one side and rent the other side out, then you can use a percentage of that rental income. So the answer is yes, no, and maybe. It depends on what you're doing and what you want to do. But yes, you can use that rental income if you've had any experience. The normal is that you take the amount of rent times 75%, and that actually counts as rental income. So if you make $5,000 a month and you buy a $2,000 a rental property that has $2,000 a month rent, you can actually add $1,500 in usable income. So it's a great way to do it. Now, that comes to another question. I already own my own home, but I want to buy a rental property. Mm-hmm. Now, Beth and I were talking a little bit earlier, and we were talking about what if we kept our home and made it into a rental property and then buy a new home. That's a phenomenal idea. Why is that a great idea? Well, first of all, you can make say you have an FHA loan and you've got a really great rate on it, but you just don't have the 20-30% down payment. You can convert your existing home, refinance the FHA loan into a conventional loan, reuse your FHA loan for a new home, and voila, Now you have an investment property and you were able to move up to the next home. So that's another huge option.
Yeah, I actually have an investor that did that. He bought his first home and lived there. And then when he was ready to buy his second, he actually moved out and rented that home so he could establish some rental history, moved in with his family again. And then once he was able to use that income, he bought his second home and he started renting out rooms. And then he's done that 3 times now.
By the way, that's another good point. Boarders income. That's right. Even though you live in the house, it's your home. If you rent out your rooms to boarders, and here's the key, you've got to be honest and put it on your tax returns for 2 years, you can actually use that income as rental income as well. That's something a lot of people don't know and don't actually do. But Beth, that's a great idea. Take your first home. It's usually small. It's usually a starter home. Keep it. Buy the next home. Now, that goes into the next question. And it's something that's kind of affecting the entire industry. What are the rates, and are the rates higher for investment properties? Now, I know the first thing most people say is it's too expensive to buy right now. Let me explain something to you. It's not too expensive, and here's why. It's called a very simple law of supply and demand. We don't have enough houses on the market. Beth, how many houses do you see coming on the market right now compared to 3 or 4 years ago? Maybe 10, 15, 20% of what we normally see?
Correct. This morning when I looked, I believe I think it was 6 or 7 in Stockton today.
That's it.
Yeah.
So you are, first of all, you're competing the law of supply and demand, but what does that mean? Why does it make it a good time to buy? Well, if you're going to buy a rental property now, today, you're buying it today's dollars. Yes, you're going to pay a high rate, but we've never had a stop of appreciation of real estate in California. Right now in San Joaquin County, our projected is about 5%. Realistically, though, year over year, we're up about 12%. What does that mean? It means if you buy a rental property today at a high rate, I mean, we're talking 7s and 8s.
Yeah.
But you wait 1 year and you've made 5 to 10%. That's doing a whole lot better than your 401k with all the tax write-offs and everything else. So is it a good time? Yes. Are rates high? Yes. Now, one of the other questions that kind of goes into the same thing is, why are they so high? And can the seller help? Now, if the only way you can buy rental properties on the conventional market is with either Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan. Now, one of the questions Beth asked earlier was alternative to the regular conventional. We'll talk about that in a minute. But for now, did you know that buying a rental property costs you between 2.5 and 3.5 points more than buying a regular home? What do you mean? I mean, what's the point? 1% of the loan amount. So you buy a $400,000 home, and you normally, right now in this market, you're going to pay probably 1 origination fee and 1.5 discount fees. On a rental property, you're going to pay the origination fee and anywhere from 3 to 5%.
Wow, that's really
of the cost for it. Well, the current administration said that if you're rich enough to own a home now, if you're going to buy a second home or a rental property, you need to pay for it. It's called LLPAs, Lender's Loan Price Adjustments. They raised it through the roof. But it's a tax write-off. If you're thinking about an investment property, it's a write-off. Everything that you're doing, let Uncle Sam pay part of the money on there. So it is additional cost. But the question was, can the seller help pay it? Yes. The seller on a Fannie Mae loan can pay, on investment properties, can pay up to 2% of the purchase price toward closing costs. If you're writing an offer on an investment property, you really need to ask the seller to pay 2 points in closing costs. Now, a lot of your realtors will say, nobody's going to pay that, Beth, in this market. The truth is, a smart, savvy investor that owns real estate property knows exactly what they need to do, and they're going to do that. They're going to be cooperative because it's a win-win.
Right.
They're going to get a decent price out of their home. You're going to get a decent price to buy a home. Everybody wins. So yes, it is more expensive. The seller can pay some of that, but these are things you need to negotiate up front. Beth, when you write an offer, one of the things that you educate your buyers on is that it has to be a win-win, right?
Correct.
So what's the number one thing that you're telling buyers right now on what they need to offer?
So right now I'm telling people that we don't want to come in really low. We want to come in and look at what the value is coming out when we compare the market. So we want to come in strong. We want to make sure it's going to appraise. But the number one thing is we want to make sure that it's going to be good for them. We don't want to wait because, like we were talking about with appreciation, it's going to appreciate and we don't know what the interest rates are going to be, but the house is going to cost more in a year than it does today. So let's get you in now, and yeah, let's see what we can do to get your rate to be something that you can manage. You know, if you can afford to pay the mortgage, even if it's tight, it's going to put you in a better situation a year from now, 5 years from now, 30 years from now, than waiting and renting or not taking on that investment property. So just making sure that it's going to work for you, and then doing what we can to make it financially beneficial as far as interest rates and payments.
And Beth, I think you would say this is true too. The people that are looking at that, if you're looking at an investment property, there's a lot of people looking at that same investment property.
Yeah.
You're not going to steal it. You're not going to lowball it.
Nope.
You're not going to get a phenomenal deal because you came in $20,000 because everybody wants that same property.
Right.
Why? You're not going to buy, what's the typical first-time buyer on an investment property? What kind of price range do you think the normal price range is to buy your first home?
To buy your first home or first
rental
investment?
property. Rental.
Okay, well, it just depends on what you're going to be looking for. First rental property, if it's a home, if it's a single family residence, I mean, we're looking probably around $400 to $450 right now. But if we're looking at a duplex, it just depends on what your goals are. You know, I had another one of the agents send me an off-market property yesterday, and they're going to sell it for $350,000. Now, it's not the most up to date, but they're going to put a new roof on it. There's deals like that out there. Not the best neighborhood, but there's deals like that out there. If you're looking for something in a really good area, it's going to be a duplex, you're probably looking high fives to mid $600,000 range.
And how many of those are out there right now?
Not a lot. You know, in Stockton, the top area for those kind of properties really that people ask me about all the time is in the Lincoln School District. And boy, when those pop up, those go fast.
Well, and the reason is because one of the things that I do as a lender with first-time buyers is we're telling them to do the same thing. Buy that duplex, live in one side out, and become an automatic investor. Yep. So that's another good thought. If you are in, say, your first home and you bought a small home to begin with, now you're ready to move up, consider spending a little bit more money, but getting a nice sized duplex. Bump it up, because if you can afford the payment for the next house up, what would a great thing be to make the new part, a part of it, an investment opportunity. Again, you're going to pay a lot more money, but that's another way to become an investor.
And it'll help offset some of that by having a tenant in place.
Well, and the other question is, we talked about this earlier too, is the amount of income that Beth and I were talking about before we started is, how do you determine how much income from an investment property? That's a common question that she got. A number of them were the same thing, is if I buy a rental property, can I use that income? We kind of talked about that being historical, if you've been an investor or not. The easy way to do that is to buy one that you're going to live in, one half of it, and rent the other one out. Automatically, even on an FHA loan, you can become an investor by buying a duplex, a triplex, or even a fourplex. And you can use 75% of that income to add to your income to qualify for more house. It's another great way to do it. So investments, not cheap, but really worth it.
So it's still doable then.
It's very doable. So now the other one of the questions is, how much do I need to put towards the down payment? That's
a big thing, because a lot of times first-time home buyers, it's 3.5% or 3%, or maybe we even get help with some kind of program to get you in for less than that. So what is going on with the investment properties?
where's that money come from? The minimum on a single family you're going to do is put 20% down on an investment property. Now, a $400,000 property, that means you've got to put down $80,000 down payment plus your closing costs. Now, on a normal house with escrow accounts and impounds and everything else that you've got, we tell everybody to figure about 4% of the sales price for closing costs. On an investment property, that number realistically, if you impound and make your taxes and insurance part of it, you're realistically looking at 7 or 8% because of the additional money's on there on a regular conventional loan. So you need roughly 25 to 30% money for a down payment on an investment property. Now, are there alternatives to that? And again, the alternative to that is exactly like we talked about, buying your next home as a duplex or a triplex and renting part of it out. Guess what? You can do that, Beth, for 3.5% down. You can buy a triplex using an FHA loan, have 2 rental properties, and only put 3.5% down payment plus your normal closing costs. Isn't that cool?
That is. So they have to move into it, though.
They have to move into one side. Now, the other question that is asked every time is, if I do that, how long do I have to live there?
Right.
Well, you can't fraud FHA. It's a big no-no.
Yeah,
that is
we
actually a
wouldn't
felony.
Want to encourage
yeah,
that.
we would never do that. However, there is not a set time. It's that you intend to make it your home. Now, what's a reasonable time? I would say a year. Are they going to come after you if it's a little bit less than that? Probably not. But you're not going to buy it just as a way to say that you're getting into it and then rent all 3 units out or both units out. You need to live in it. However, there's nothing that says you can't live in the property for a year and refinance that into a conventional loan and then go buy another duplex or another triplex using FHA again. Now, FHA cautions you that FHA is not a loan meant to build a portfolio.
Right.
But if it makes sense, it is allowable. But you need to really figure 25 to 30%. Now, where can that money come from? First of all, we've already talked about the seller being able to pay 2% toward the closing costs. 401k, Roth IRA, inheritance money that you've had sitting invested. Do you know how many people right now have tens of thousands of dollars sitting in their 401k making 2 and 3% a year? Now everybody goes, well, you can't pull the money out, you can't do this, you can't do that. You actually can. If you're using it to buy a rental property, you can take the money. Now you're going to have to pay a penalty for early withdrawal if you're not 55 or older, and you're going to have to pay income taxes on there. That's where you need to talk to your financial planner. If you're a financial planner and you're listening to this, call us. We'd love to talk to you and your clients about how to structure some of this to make it actually work for you. And it can really work for it. So 25 to 30% total. You can ask the seller to cooperate on part of it.
I do have a question about the 401k.
Sure.
Back when I was in my corporate world, we were able to actually do loans off of that. Now, I know usually it's really frowned upon to take out an equity to help finance another house or to pull it off a credit card or borrow it, right? Because then it hits your debt to income ratio. Does it work differently with a 401k loan?
It does. Good question. Because if you borrow the money from there's 2 types of ways to get money from a 401k. A disbursement, which means you take it out of your 401k permanently, or a loan. Now, the general rules are you can take up to about 50% of your available amount of money. So say you had $200,000 in your 401k. You could borrow theoretically up to about $100,000 of that. Now, you will have to make a payment on that, but it does not count toward your debt to income ratio because you're paying yourself back money. It's like taking the money out of your savings account and then putting that money back in every month until you get it built back in? Great question, and it's a great way to look at it. Now, that's the first thing you need to do is talk to your financial advisor at your 401k, and they can tell you exactly how much money you can take out of your 401k.
I know that some places don't let you do that as well.
Nobody wants to. You got to realize that most financial planners are paid by their volume and by the amount of money that they manage. All the 401ks are the same thing. It's how much money they retain. But the real answer is usually yes, you can. Make that phone call. Once you do that, that's your very first step. So let's go to the next one. I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but should I wait to buy an investment property until the rates come back down? Well, Beth, I don't know about you, but I don't have a crystal ball. And I'm telling you right now, the economy, the feds, they're not doing what we all thought they would be doing. We actually expected rates to start coming down now, and they're not. So I hear this, I don't even like it, but they say you marry the house and rent the rate.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what they're saying. My thinking is you're not tied to this rate forever. Now, at 6 months to a year, you can refinance. As a lender, our job is to consistently monitor that, and we're here to advise you and let you know. Beth is going to reach out to you. And she has an entire database of people that she keeps in contact with and says, look, rates have gone up, rates have gone down. Have you talked to the lender lately about where you're at? You need to do a financial checkup once in a while, especially right now. Mm-hmm. So is it a good time? It is. Let me explain one thing, why it's a good time. Even though the rates are high, law of supply and demand. Now, we hit on that a little bit earlier. What does that actually mean? Well, normally in the United States, we have about 4 million homes on the market at any one time. Last 2 years, we've had about 1 million. That means we're down to 25% of what we normally had. So what does that mean? It means that people aren't putting their homes on the market for a myriad of reasons, but when they don't, it's the law of supply and demand. A lot of people want to buy homes, and there are not a lot of homes. So guess what? If I have an apple and you're hungry, you're going to pay me what I want for that apple, right? Aren't you? So is that going to change? Now, this wise guy, Uncle Bob, he's a financial advisor, by the way. He works at a trucking company, but I always hear, well, Uncle Bob said this. Uncle Bob says the market's going to crash. Beth, we didn't see it crash, did we?
We didn't see it
We
crash.
saw it go up. We saw the supply of homes still go down. They're down from the beginning of the year, so that makes it a good time to buy investment property or your first home. The time to buy is when you can find a home that you can get an accepted contract. Now, as a lender, we're only going to approve you on something you can afford. Is it necessarily going to be comfortable? No. But Beth, when was the last time that you talked to a buyer and we talked about rates or payments and they said, oh, that's really low? It doesn't happen. But guess what? Buying a house today, you're going to start a couple things, building that appreciation. And Beth can tell you exactly what the house sold for the last time it sold. Mm-hmm. And when you look at that, it's going to be surprising. So yes, it's a good time because the demand's not there. Now, what happens? And this is, listen, if you're not an investor and you're looking to buy your first home, listen really closely, because the law of supply and demand says that people are not buying right now because the rates are high.
Right.
What happens when that rate drops 1%, Beth?
It's going to be a street fight with buyers coming out of the woodwork trying to get to the house.
We think a year and a half ago was bad, paying $50,000 to $75,000 more. If a man dying of thirst has a chance to spend his entire life savings on a glass of water, that's what he's going to do. I know that's a little severe, but it's true. You know, we saw people just a year and a half ago paying huge amounts of money over no appraisal, no repairs, no anything. I just want the house, give it to me. And guess what? They're okay now. The appreciation went up and they're okay. That's where you're at. Do you think about this? You buy an investment property today for $400,000 and you're going to pay a high rate. But in a year from now, that 400 at 5% is now worth 420. The next year it's worth 425, 445, and on and on and on. If you paid in tight market rates were down, you paid $50,000 more for that house, but you got it. You've just lost 2 years of equity, appreciation that you could have built up. So no, the time is right now to buy that house. Rates will come back down. It goes up and down all the time.
I had a question. I was just thinking, now you've been a lender for a while in this area, right?
42 years.
Okay, so that would put you on about 1981?
79, yeah.
Okay, so what were the interest rates like?
We actually, my wife and I, in 1977, our daughter was born. We bought our first house, a little house on Oak Street, 2-bedroom, 1-bath. The heater was a floor furnace in the hallway. You had to literally step over it. Yeah. We paid $24,000 for that house. 18% interest on what FHA called at the time a GPAR, graduated payment adjustable rate mortgage. Hey, our rate started out at 12% and went to 18%. In 2007, 2008, and a 1-year adjustable rate loan was 9 to 12%. And the second part of it was an 80-20. Yeah, the first was 9 to 10, 12%. The second was anywhere from 12 to 15%. Now, we're still pretty spoiled. If you can get a house right now at 6s to 7s, back in that day, we would have thought you stole it. In fact, Dave Ramsey's a financial coach, and he's always told people, have as little debt as you can. And yet, a couple years ago, when rates hit 5, he said, max out everything you can get because you'll never see the rates that low again. And we actually saw them go lower than that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good time. Rates will come back down. We'll be there to refinance it. Or you're going to turn around and relist the house with Beth, sell it, and buy the next one. It depends on your equity.
Well, and I mean, at $24,000, how much do you think that house is worth today?
I know how much the house is worth. I keep track of that house. And it just recently sold about a year ago for $319,000. And it's a little bitty house. The next house we had in 79 was 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I paid $77,000 for it. I sold the house 3 years later and made about $40,000 on it. The rate was somewhere in the 9.5 to 10s by then because Reagan was in office and things started getting better, Reaganomics and all that fun stuff. So you see this thing go up and then it goes down, up and down. It's a cycle. So it will come back down. The rates will come back down. No, and I can tell you right now, they're not going to hit the 3s again.
You don't think we're going to see 2.75?
No, we will never see that. That's another entire podcast about why we're at where we're at. But some bad choices made by the Republicans and the Democrats have caused us to be where we're at. But let's talk about that. We have people talking about the equity in their homes, and a great way to get the money to buy your first investment property is to pull the equity out of your house. I'm not going to get rid of my 2.875 rate. You're going to miss out on how much? That 2.875 rate compared to a 6% rate. Maybe it's $400 a month bigger in payment. $400 times 12 is what? $4,800? Yeah. That's what it cost you to get a $400,000 rental property that would have made you $20,000 in equity. So $4,800 in payment as opposed to $20-some-odd thousand. It's mental, folks. And we all do the same thing. It's called FOMO, the fear of missing out. You don't want to get rid of that rate. You don't want to sell your house because you want to keep that 3% rate. But you're going to miss out on buying the house of your dreams. You're going to miss out on buying that investment property that you've always wanted. Why? You have a fear of losing that. And it's not real. If you really do the numbers, and that's what Beth and I will talk to you about. Call us after we're done. Anytime. We'll run through the numbers for you and show you some scenarios that will show you not keeping that mortgage is probably the smartest thing you could do right now. Let it go. It's like a Band-Aid. Yeah. You pull the Band-Aid off, it hurts for a second, and then You
And
think
you
about how
adjust.
good it feels.
Mhm.
It's the same thing on investment properties. So let's do a couple more. What do we
almost
want
there,
to do? Let's see.
Why should they stick with the 1 and 4 units and not go up to a 5-unit, 6-unit apartment complex, something like that?
That's a school of thought. And I get phone calls every day. And they always say, I don't own a house, but I want to buy a fourplex. I want to buy 8 units. I want to buy 10 units. And I said, okay, have you Googled it? Have you gone online? Have you researched it? No, I had a friend that said that was a great way to do it. Or I bought that guy, what's his name, Tony Bobbins, or I don't know, some guy like that. Anyway, a guy sells you books, says use other people's money.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work. Let me tell you, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work?
Yeah.
First of all, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are 1 to 4. On a conventional loan, it's called a QM. Again, we don't want to take time to go qualified mortgage. And they will only make a 1 to 4 unit a qualified mortgage. Anything outside of that is a non-QM. We used to call it alternate sub A, not hard money, but it just didn't meet the guidelines. But then you get into things like DSCR. What's that mean? ROI, DSR, debt service. It's a ratio. In other words, that property has to have a percentage of the payments cover the entire payment. How do you get to that? It's bigger down payment. If the rents are really high and you can put 30% down, it may debt service.
Okay.
Probably not right now. So you have to, the more money down to get to this ratio, this magic number that these commercial investors want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not only that, but they're not going to loan to somebody that doesn't have a heavy experience in it. It's a great idea. Everybody wants to do the same thing. But it's a lot riskier. You have to hire usually a full-time property manager. You say, I can do it myself. Have you tried to evict anybody lately? Have you tried to deal with tenants and toilets at 4 o'clock in the morning on 12 or 14 units? It's a full-time job. So why would I stick to 1 to 4? First of all, it's easier to get financing. You can get it for less money for the down payment, and you can actually qualify. It's always an option. After you've had 2 or 3 investment properties, you sell those properties, you got a big chunk of equity. That's the time to do it. But hey, guess what? We got to take that first step before we can get anywhere else.
Walk before you run, something like that.
You got it.
Gotcha.
So buy your first home, convert it to a rental. Number 1, easiest way to start. But you like your house that you're in. You've got some money saved up. You had an inheritance. You had a windfall from something. You have the money to do it. It's a great time to buy a rental property. Now, you don't just start looking on Zillow. You don't start looking at Redfin. What do? The first thing you do is talk to your realtor and your lender. The very first thing to do is get pre-qualified, lay it all out. How much money do you have? What are your credit scores? What's your history of rental property? We do an entire package. We do the credit, the income verifications. We know exactly where you're at, and we have you pre-approved before you look at your first investment property.
Mm-hmm.
Then it gets handed back over to Beth. Beth sits down. Now, this is the difference between a good realtor and a realtor. A good realtor is going to do an assessment intake. They're going to sit down and ask you 30 to 50 questions. Not just how high are you approved, what area do you want to buy. That's a realtor. A good realtor, the ones we use, that's why we call it Real Pro, the professional realtor will ask you the right questions so that Beth can help you find the right investment property. Mm-hmm. Do not get caught up in quick and easy. It's like the old adage, if it's quick and easy, it's probably not worth a lot.
Yeah.
Get fully pre-approved, meet with your realtor. Number 1 thing, set expectations. Mm-hmm. What do I need as opposed to what do I want? And know that those are going to change. Beth, About 4 or 5 offers into it, you have that meeting where you reset the expectations, don't you?
Right.
They wanted to buy a fourplex at $800,000, and their real budget is to buy a little bitty single family house, and they've got to see what's out there before they make that. So reset those expectations.
I was just talking to one of the agents I coach, and his clients want something very specific, and I told him, let's just get out in the market and see how that goes, because I bet you things are going to change as they start to maybe not having the success with what they're wanting. So it changes. Sometimes it changes, and that's why you have to regroup. That's why I never like to take a customer out and go look at houses until we've sat down for 30 minutes to an hour and really are on the same page and we know exactly what we're going to be moving forward with.
That's true. We're going to call it an end to today's episode. Now, we're going to put a link on here for both of us that you can talk to us after this. The number one thing that we want you to take away is it is a good time to buy rental property. It's a good time to get that first investment property. Is it exactly like you want it to be? Is it what you hoped it would be? Probably not. But our goal is to educate you as to the process, provide options for you, and in doing all that, you can start the road to ownership of your first investment property. Hope you guys have a great day. Feel free to give us a call with any questions you have. Beth Lowe with Keller Williams here in Stockton and Ralph Gresham with Primary Residential. Hoping you guys have a phenomenal day.
Thanks, Ralph. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.